Hi there, I'm Danny Flexen. Welcome to the latest edition of Seconds Out FLEXpectations. We're here every Thursday, 4:30 PM, to look ahead to things going on in the world of boxing. And this week, you'll have to excuse the strange backdrop and angle. I was trying to crop the radiator out, which you might see still a little bit to the side of me. I felt a bit like Terry Waite on one of those hostages. Bad taste joke, but also a dated one. This week, there's not loads going on this weekend in terms of big fights happening, with all due respect to Sergei Lipinets and Castillo Clayton fighting for the IBF interim welterweight title, which is on Showtime on Saturday night. I spoke to Castillo last night, really lovely guy. That'll be up today, might even be up by the time you watch this, actually. But we've given that kind of a bit of coverage there, but it's not a massive fight, particularly in the UK. So I thought I'd look a bit further ahead and use this episode of FLEXpectations to talk a little bit about the judging controversy from last week, although that would be more suited to reflections, and I have already discussed it, but more so what impact it will have. We found out a couple of days after Terry O'Connor's, not just his conduct, but also his terrible scoreline for the Ritson-Miguel Vazquez fight, had Ritson way ahead in a fight that for most neutral observers, Ritson did not do enough to win. But there was more controversy arose after the fight when pictures emerged or screenshots emerged of O'Connor apparently looking away from the action in the ring and instead giving his attention to something else. Originally, people thought it was a mobile phone, but later on, when the tape was slowed down, it seemed to be his scorecard, which may be more respectable than looking at his phone, but still wasn't looking at the action taking place in the ring, which is no great surprise given the scorecard that was revealed later on. We then found out from the British Boxing Board of Control, 2 days later, I think the notice was issued to say that O'Connor would be called before the board due to his appointment to the Ritson fight. That's as kind of specific as it got. It's very vague. But from the interview that IFL did with Robert Smith straight after the show, or the morning after rather, it seems like the controversy in their view is more related to the photographs than the score itself. Robert Smith said he didn't see anything, he's General Secretary of the Board of Control, for people that don't know, said he didn't see anything controversial about the score that O'Connor tallied, but that he would be talking to him regarding the pictures that emerged. Now, yeah, it is important if he's distracted from the action, and there's been a history of bad scorecards or scorecards that differ from the general consensus from Terry O'Connor over the years. But that's not the only issue, and if the board can see a fight where someone clearly appears to be outboxed and accept a wide scorecard in favour of the person who should have been adjudged a loser, then how are things ever going to change? Robert Smith probably wasn't watching it quite as diligently as the judges, Terry O'Connor aside, but he should still know that it's not a particularly close fight, and even if it was, it certainly wasn't a wide fight in Ritson's favour. So he'll be called before the board, Terry O'Connor, and they'll ask him to explain his actions, but from the kind of feelers we're getting and the indications from Robert Smith, they're not going to be asking him to actually explain the scorecard. And I think that's what needs to happen. He needs to be sat down in front of a video, only give his scorecard to him between rounds, don't let him have it during the fight, and just watch it back and mark the scores as he goes and justify it. So at the end of each round, I've scored it 10-9 for this guy, here's why. And if that's acceptable, and I don't see how it possibly could be if he comes to the same score as the first time, then we've got a much bigger problem. I spoke to Lou DiBella for DiBella's Digest last night. You'll see this tomorrow, Friday. And he said it did give him cause for concern because he's got George Kambosos Jr., who's coming over to fight Lee Selby in an IBF final eliminator at lightweight on the Usyk Chisora bill on the 31st of October. And he said, yeah, it does concern me because there's no way on earth, and he watched it obviously over in the US on DAZN presumably. He said there's no way Ritson won that fight, echoing the views of most people who watched it. So he took massive issue with that. But as I said to him, and you'll see this on the video, this may be the very best time for his fighter for this controversy to emerge, because in 2 weeks his fight will be over here hoping to get a fair shake, and the cloud of controversy and contention from Terry O'Connor's behaviour will still be hanging over UK boxing. So if there's ever a good time to get a fair decision, or even to overcompensate in favour of an away fighter, it's now. I don't want to plant any seeds of doubt in Lee Selby's mind, but it's a good time, I think, for a foreign boxer to come over, because you're not going to see a massive controversy or a hometown decision, if you like, so soon after the big furore that's been caused by this. But it still doesn't solve the long-term problem. Not only does Terry O'Connor need to explain his scorecard round by round to the stewards of the board, he should be placed on some sort of suspension or retraining program, because there is a pattern here. And it's not necessarily corruption. I'm not even alleging that. But it could be incompetence. It could be distraction, as we saw. It could be anything, but it can't continue. And he's by no means the only judge who turns in a bad scorecard. But it does seem to be a regular occurrence with him. And his ones do seem to be particularly egregious. We can take it all the way back to Tyson Fury being adjudged a wide victor over John McDermott when Terry O'Connor was the only judge, the scoring referee in that case. But there's been several since. Someone put up a post on Twitter, and I'm sorry I'm not giving them the credit because I can't remember the handle, but it was like Terry O'Connor's greatest hits. And it had about 8 on there, I think, maybe more. And people were replying underneath, adding ones that had been missed. And it just shows not only that he's done so many that there's enough to put on a list like that, but also that boxing fans off the top of their head on social media are able to add more that aren't on the list. It shows how deep an impact they've had and just how bad the scorecards must have been. So looking ahead to the board meeting, I don't have great faith in the board that they're going to do this, because we haven't seen it before. We haven't seen many judges demoted after terrible scorecards or a pattern of terrible scorecards. But I hope they will put him on a temporary suspension and give him a retraining program. Make sure he knows what he's scoring. Make sure there must be guidelines given to all the board officials of what they should be scoring, what the criteria is. Make sure he knows that off by heart. Test him. Put him in environments. Put an exhibition on. Put him in a spa. Not put him in a spa. I'm sure a lot of people, including Miguel Vazquez, would like that. But no, have him judge a spa as a test. And see if it differs from other people judging it. Is his scorecard often the only dissenting one in decisions which go the right way? And right is obviously in inverted commas because it's a subjective sport. Analyse his record in detail. I would be amazed if someone from the board has actually sat down and looked at all his decisions over the last couple of years and saying, oh yeah, that's a split vote and he's the dissenting vote in X percentage of times. But that needs to be done. If I had the time, I'd do it, because I think it'd be a really interesting thing and it'd be damning evidence. But it's not just having the time to do it, it's whether the board would then take it into account. So a lot of ideas there for what needs to be done. I mean, I don't think just sack him. I don't think that solves the wider problem, but I think you make an example of him. I think he needs to be shown the error of his ways and how to correct them. And then going forward, hopefully you get the new crop of judges coming in. And there's plenty of judges now that are really good. I don't think they should all be tarred with the same brush. But anyone out there who is vulnerable to distraction or not knowing the criteria well enough or complacency or whatever the issue is, they're less likely to feel they can get away with it if strong action is taken now to rehabilitate, if you like, Terry O'Connor rather than just punish him. But yeah, and also I think we need a wider crop of judges and referees coming through who genuinely want to do it for the good of the sport, and because it's not great money or anything like that and it takes up a lot of your time, but who genuinely want to do it for the good of the sport and who come with fresh eyes, haven't been in the sport for a long time, haven't become inured to certain things or have certain preferences in styles, which is, human nature when you've been watching the sport for as long as a lot of these judges have, and crack on with it, because it's not doing UK boxing's reputation any good. Lou DiBella is just one example of people that are dismayed by some of the recent decisions over here, and it's not only Terry O'Connor. But the fact is, we used to worry about British fighters going to Germany and Italy and places like that and getting the rub of the green. And now I think it's switched a little bit, and the other countries are worried about their fighters coming here and getting a fair shout. And that's not something we want. We're a hub of boxing at the moment in the UK, and credit to the promoters and the fighters for making that happen, and the broadcasters. But this tarnishes it, and I think we can't keep doing it. I think if it's a one-off and the action's taken, then we can remove the cloud, if you like, before it gets too big and the heavens open. But if we don't, and it's allowed to continue unchecked, then it's a much, much bigger problem. But I want to hear what you guys think. Not just the Terry O'Connor's scorecard, which I think most people outside of the Northeast will agree was pretty out there, but more to the point, what should be done now about the sport in general and about the judging in the sport in general and Terry O'Connor specifically. Let me know your thoughts, because I'm sure there's loads of possibilities that I haven't thought of that would work really well. So let me know. I'll be back on Monday for reflections. I'm not sure what that'll be on yet because there's not loads going on at the weekend, but I'm sure there'll be something. And next week, Thursday, 4:30 p.m. for the next FLEXpectations, where we'll actually have a show to look forward to, which is good. Really appreciate your time, as always. I'm not chained to the radiator, just to show you both hands. So I'm not. This isn't a coded message to come and rescue me. You'll be glad to know, because no one really wants to come to Snodland. Thanks very much for your help. No, not your help. Thanks very much for watching, and I'll see you all soon. Cheers.